Okay, so a couple things. Our stuff for Module 1 is due tonight at midnight. And I know a couple of you are having technical difficulties, and I'll grant you an extension. But is everyone pretty much up on SAMS now at this point? Able to navigate everything? And good, okay. So we're going to move into Module 2, and I think you'll find, Module 2 isn't very difficult either. I think you'll find that a lot of it is review. There's some neat things maybe you haven't used before. We'll talk about things like conditional formatting, which can be very useful. But first kind of stuff is things you've probably, I hope you've seen before. So the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of formatting a worksheet. And the numbers are important, but how it looks also is important because we're trying to convey something to the user of it, to the consumer of it. And we want to make sure that that meaning is clear and concise. And we can do that a lot of different ways. We can do that with font sizes and colors. We can do that with indentation. We can do that with conditional formatting. So I'm not going to follow the case in the book, exactly, because I think it would take too long and not be very exciting. So what I want to do, though, is let's bring up this sample file. So if we go to Module Tutorials, Module Tutorial 2, and I don't have a date set on that, depends how much we get through today and Wednesday. And I want you to go to Module 2 Data Files, and there's the 4 bookcases, and just go to Module, and I want you to go to open up the morning.xlsx workbook. And I'm just going to go through, not exactly, they take, I think it's pretty slow if you go through the book, but I'm going to just show you everything I think is in this first part, okay? So if we're talking about formatting, one of the important ways we format things is through the text, the font size. And under the Home tab in the font grouping, there's quite a few tools that allow us to do that. Obviously, one that I know you've used before, if we look at, let's go to A1, I'm in the Documentation tab, and if we click on the drop-down, we have different font families. Now, one thing you may not have noticed, but you notice there's 2 groupings there. There's theme fonts and all fonts, okay? So those 2 fonts, Calibri, and that's how you say it, and Calibri Light, are tied to the current theme we're using. The default theme is Office theme. We'll talk about how you set that in a bit. And then below, there's a whole bunch of other fonts that are installed on your computer, okay? So, typically we say stick with the standard fonts just because we can't be ensured that everyone has the crazy fonts that we might be using. But anyways, I'm just going to change this to Calibri, and I'm going to change the font size. And I think I showed you earlier, you can choose font sizes that aren't here if you want to. If we don't have 25, but if I want it to be 25 exactly, I can just enter and do that. Obviously, the other things in the font group, we have bolding. Okay, we can bold things. We can italicize things, and we can underline and double underline things. So that's a possibility. If we look at background colors, so let's just go to Hot Drink Cafe, and if I go to background colors, you'll also see, and this might be something that you've never really noticed, but you'll also see there are 2 groupings of colors. There are theme colors and there are standard colors. So the standard colors are going to be available no matter what theme you're using. There's 10 of them, so I don't know what those colors are, but those are the colors. These theme colors are tied to the theme. So if I was using a different theme, I would have a different palette of colors here. So let's pick, let's pick I'll pick a green one here. And I guess it probably makes sense to talk about where these themes are since I've mentioned them twice now. If we leave the Home tab and go to Page Layout, over here in the Themes grouping, I'm not sure how much you guys have used that, but this is common in all Office products. If I click on the drop down for themes, the standard theme is an Office theme, okay? So that is the default. But if I wanted to use, I don't know, Slice, let's use Slice, and you can see the things that are changing behind me. Couple things changed. The font size changed. The font changed. Why did the font change? Well, apparently the theme fonts for Slice are not Calibri, but are Century Gothic. So changing, the style changed those automatically. Did that make sense? And you'll notice this color, which wasn't this a green color when I had the Office theme? Well, it's still the same position. You see, it's like the bottom or the furthest row, 2 from the top, but it's tied to that. If I changed, I should have done this. If I change, just use a standard color, I want this to be green, right? Even if I change the theme back to, well, let's do Ion Board, this is always going to be green because it's a standard color. You know what I'm saying? It's standard across all themes. Does that make sense? You guys see that relationship? A couple other things when we talk about this, well, let's go back. The other thing we can do is also, as you guys know, is we can change the color of the font itself. There are theme colors just like we have with the background, and there are standard colors as well. If we expand the font grouping, other things that we can see inside the font grouping, we can do superscript. Superscript, as you know, is like, something squared, it's raised, it's a smaller letter raised. You guys know what I'm talking about with superscript. Subscript is a smaller thing. Straight through is a line through it. So that's probably good with the font. Okay. So a lot of font stuff. If we go to page layout, this isn't something that I've done a great deal of, but if we go to page layout, they want us to show that we can add a background to the page. So if I go to background, I can insert to this worksheet a background picture from a file, and I don't know what's on this computer. I don't see any pictures on this computer. Or I can do a Bing search, so I don't know, Saint SFU Red Flash. And I can insert a background. Now, that background is going to make it difficult to work with, I would say. And it doesn't really change any of the contents of the cell, it's just a background. So I'm going to delete that background, okay? So just something I want to show you we can do. Let's go over to the sales report worksheet, and we have a lot of things here, and it wants us to put in some numbers, okay? And all this content is correct, but you'll notice a lot of things probably aren't formatted very nicely. It's kind of a ugly way to display it. This is money here, and that's not a good way to show money. You see the alignment looks like it's off. You see down here those numbers don't look very nice as well. So we're going to fix this up a little bit. So the first thing it wants us to do, let's go to cell C6. And it wants us to calculate total gross sales in here. And we're going to do so by summing C27 through N46. Which is summing this table below that has all the sales for all of our stores. Do you guys notice that? So I sum C27 to N46. You guys with me? In cell C9, okay, in cell C9, I'm going to calculate the current year's net profit loss. I'm going to take C6, and I'm going to subtract out C7 plus C8. I'm going to do the same thing for 2016. So I'm just going to drag that formula over there because the referencing will be all good. Go ahead, Jim.
What's your gross sales again?
Some C27 through N46. It's down below. We have a table by store by month, so it's a grid we're summing. We want to figure out the gross sales by store. So in cell C16, we're going to calculate out C6 divided by C23, where C23 is the number of stores. I'm going to just drag that over. I'm not going to do all these. Drag that over because then this looks like it's right too, because we have only 18 stores in 2016. Let us though figure out the net change. So I'm going to put a formula in here. The net change between 2016 and 2017 is C6 minus D6. And I want a percentage change here. So I'm going to put E16 whoops, I did the wrong thing there. This should be, my net change is C16 minus D16. And the percentage change would be E16 divided by, looks like D16. And I'm not gonna, they want us to figure out this whole thing, but I'm not gonna do that. But I want you guys to help me make this look better. You know, this doesn't look good. So what can I do to improve the visibility, the clarity of this? I guess it's an income statement. What are some things that I can do to improve this income statement? Anything? Nothing. Put the SFU logo behind it. Yeah?
Or E and F, just align it to the right. Just did everything else.
For E and F? So let's talk about this. This is money, right? These values are money. So how should we display them? As what? Go ahead. Okay. So a couple things, okay? I'm going to highlight all these cells here, and you see there's some, under the Home tab, under the number grouping, you know, there are some currency tabs, okay? So when we see this, what happened there? What's the pound symbol mean? Yeah, that means it doesn't fit. So we can make it fit. We can double click between, you know, auto fit that. And a lot of times in financial statements, and in this case, we actually don't want the double zeros, right? I mean, who cares about pennies when we're talking about millions of dollars? So we can reduce the number of decimal places using this button over here. Okay. Another approach we can use, okay, with currency, we can also use accounting. There are, you know, ways if we want to do We can get rid of the commas. That doesn't get rid of the commas because I have an accounting format. But let's get rid of the decimal places. And I think that looks a little bit better. I should probably indicate that 2016, 2017, the way it's currently construed, kind of just blends in with the data itself. However, I don't think it should, right? It's a label. It should look a little different. Now, a couple things I can do. I could shade this in myself, right? I could say, well, let's pick a background color, that maybe makes it stand out a little bit more. Or maybe you guys have used this, maybe you haven't. Under the Home tab, over here in the Styles area, you guys see the Styles area? Tied to tied to the theme that we're currently using. There are various, I can't remember what the style I picked, but yours might look different. But I can pick a style. Let's say I'm going to use Accent 3. And I'm going to center those. Now I could have, selected, non-adjacent. Maybe I could have done this, hold down my control key, my shift, my control key, yes, and select non-adjacent rows, non-adjacent cells, and do the same thing there. But perhaps I would like to, I'm going to undo that. Perhaps I just want to say, whatever these two are, I want to apply to this range and this range. One way we can do that is we can do Format Painter. So I'm going to highlight 2016, 2017. Over here under the Home tab, I'm going to click the little paintbrush, and then I can paint that format on. Now, I only get, if I hit the paintbrush once, I only get like one brush, right? I get one brush, and now it's no longer, the paint is gone, okay? The format is off. What I want to do, though, is maybe I want to do multiple areas. If I say I want to paint this format somewhere else, I can double click, and now this paintbrush is, still a paintbrush. So if I wanted to, apply that to multiple areas, I could do so until I turn it off, right? So anything I touch is going to have that format. If you notice, if we change the theme, okay, that font changes, and also that cell style changes, right? Because those things are tied together. Okay, other things in the Home tab that maybe are a little bit ugly is ugly, right? That percentage change, 0.033. Obviously, I would think we would want to make that a percentage format, maybe with multiple decimal places, if that makes usability better. We'll cover dates a little bit later. Let's go under the Home tab. Let's investigate the alignment grouping a little bit. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. And I guess the way this is configured is this is California, and these are all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I have 6 stores in California. So I want to take that California and I want to apply that across all those 6 stores. So I could do that by, dragging that down. One way I could do that. Or another way is I could take that grouping for those 6 cells, between the top one and bottom, And I can do merge and center. So if I do merge and center, and there's other merge options, merge and center is the most common. But if I do merge and center, you'll see California now, those 6 cells, I think there's 6 cells, are now one big cell with California at the bottom. That doesn't look great, right? Because it's kind of at the bottom. So there are a bunch of different vertical and horizontal alignments up here. You know, maybe I put California at the top. Maybe I want California in the center of that grouping, or at the bottom where it was. I could left align, I could right align, or center align. But in this case, a lot of times when you see something like this that covers, you know, multiple rows, the way we see it presented is with rotation. So under the alignment tab, you'll see that AB with an arrow. If I click on that, you know, I can angle it counterclockwise. I can angle it clockwise. I can, you know, I can do all kinds of. I can do specifically over here exactly how many degrees. If I am that anal, I want it exactly 50 degrees. You know, I can do so. Okay, so I would also probably assign some kind of cell style to those. Also in that grouping, which can help, in this case it probably doesn't make sense. Well, let's do it up here, I guess. I'll make it a little bigger. Up here, you know, I have category and then I have all the things. Maybe I want to indent this. So under the alignment tab, you know, I can do indentions as well. Some other things. So let's say I want to enter, if we look at these stores, obviously that is the store address and the phone number, you know, and they have multiple lines in a cell. So let's say I want to add another line to it. So I'm going to put this in edit mode. I'm going to go after the last phone number, and I'm going to just say, I don't know, Miko here. And it adds it to right after that line. But I want it to go to another line in the same cell. If I hit enter there, it's not going to, it just accepts what I've done. So I want to put Miko on a separate line. How do I do that inside the same cell? Do you guys know? If I just hit enter, it's going to accept it.
Shift enter?
Not shift. Alt enter. Okay. So if you do Alt Enter, it goes to the next line. So now I can put, you know, Miko down here, and now it's on 4 lines. And a lot of times we want to do that, right? We want to have within the cell, we want to have our own, you know, line breakage, I guess we would call that. It looks as if throughout this they have replaced, they've used abbreviations for things like lane and avenue, and perhaps the post office has complained about those things, so they want me to expand those. And where it says AVE dot, it wants me to use avenue. Well, I could certainly go and find all the avenues and change them manually, but that would be silly. So under the Home tab, we have an editing group. You guys see under the editing group, and there's a find and select. So I'm going to go to replace, and I'm going to find all the AVEs dot and replace them with AVENUE, avenue. And I'm going to do, I could do replace, and replace the next one, but I'm going to do replace all. And it says, hey, I found 3 of these guys, and I made 3 replacements. While we're in here, let's do lane, LN dot, and let's make that LANE, and do replace all. And we did 5 replacements. Let's see, what do we have here? This is. So let's say, I don't know if this is the best way to do this, but let's say we want to make the font a little bit bigger in all places, right? So it looks like we're using like Century Gothic 11, but we want to make anywhere we're using Century Gothic 11, we would much prefer to use Century Gothic, I don't know, 12 or 13. You know, I could do that by finding all the Century Gothic 11 and making it bigger. Or I could go to that same interface, that replace interface, and let's get rid of the find what and rid of the lane. We're not really looking at that anymore. And then click on see the options expand button. Click on that options expand button. And it says find what. And I'm going to find a format. And I'm going to change the font to Century Gothic 11. And I'm going to replace it with Century Gothic, I don't know, 14. And I'm going to make it green. Okay, so what it did there is instead of finding text, it found a format and replaced it with a corresponding format. So, you know, these aren't like earth-shattering things, you know, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people go through, you know, massive spreadsheets and try to fix every little thing up and say, oh, I missed the font change here. Because you want it, you know, to be professional, you want to have consistency throughout your document that shows that, hey, a professional created that. So that can be very, very useful. Now, this just uglied it up, so I'm going to use my undo key. But I can, you know, you can see I can do some things where I look is important. I can do it within sheet. I can do it by rows. I can say the case matches or the case doesn't have to match, meaning, you know, AV, if it was all small case, lowercase, it would match or not. So all these are possibilities. Okay, the next section wants us to size styles. Did that already? I think you'll like this tool. Okay, maybe you have used it, maybe you haven't. But we have, you know, a bunch of values here, and let's make those values look like money. And let's get rid of the decimal places. This is from C27 the whole way down to N46. And we just formatted a bunch of different things, but sometimes we want to do what we call conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is formatting based on some condition of the cell itself. So there's a whole bunch of these rules, and they can be quite useful. But let's go to conditional formatting. That's in the Home tab in the Styles grouping. And let's go to top bottom rules. And I want to see the top 10%, right? So we have all these stores over the course of the calendar year. I want to see the sales months by the whole damn organization that we're in the top 10%. So let's change it to the top, I'm going to change it to the top 25%. And I'm going to say how I want that formatted. So it says light red fill with dark red text. That's all right. I'd like to make that positive looking. And typically positive, I like green. So I'm going to say green fill with dark green text. I'm going to click OK. You know, and those are the top 25 sales months overall. Looks like, you know, that store in California, you know, almost always has a great month. I'm going to leave that highlighted. I'm going to go to conditional formatting. I'm going to do top bottom rules again. You know, let's look at the bottom. It says bottom 10%, but I'm going to say the bottom 25%. And I'm going to make that, I'll leave that as red. So we'll say red fill with dark red text. And I click OK. So now, you know, if you think about it, we almost have, you know, kind of, we have the numbers, but there's a lot of numbers there. But to display this to someone, it kind of looks now like almost like a heat map, right? These are good, these are bad. Green means good, red means bad. And I get a sense of how each of these stores is doing, right? I'm going to say, well, geez, this store always, their sales are always in the bottom 25% of our monthly sales over the course of the organization. You know, the store above it doing pretty well. Now, a couple things. You know, what we did was we created rules there. If I go into this store and let's say, oh, I was wrong, their sales weren't exactly 19,000. They were actually, for this month, they were 45,000. You'll notice when I change the text, it changes the highlighting because it's conditional based on what's inside of it. So it went from red to white. And if I really said, oh, no, it wasn't 45,000, it was 65,000, it changes it appropriately. So, you know, I don't go in and say, like, I'm going to highlight all the good ones, right? I create a rule that says you highlight all the good ones and the bad ones. If I go under conditional formatting again and go down to the bottom, okay, you'll see it says manage rules. Okay, so this is a way for us to manage the rules we just built. We have that bottom 25% rule and that top 25% rule. You know, if maybe I want to delete this rule, I can delete that rule. Okay, and I click OK or apply. You see that went away, right? So I can also, maybe I want to edit the top 25% rule. And I can, on here, go to Format. And now you see I have under here all kind of control. You know, that I don't just change font. Maybe I want the border to be, I don't know, pink border. So that it's also highlighted that way. So now, you know, that rule is also, it's green text, green shading, but also a pink highlight. Let's go to conditional, we'll just do the Seaside store. Just highlight that range because the range that I highlight is important. Remember when I was under conditional formatting, manage rules, it says applies to this range. I'm only going to apply to, maybe I'm only going to look at Seaside store in this case. Conditional formatting. Maybe I want to do, instead of like a top 10, top 25%, I want to show values, you know, greater than 30,000. And I don't know, let's do a custom format. Let's just do yellow right there. That's easy. So all the ones, you know, greater than 30,000 have been highlighted. Now, if you look under conditional formatting, you know, we've used, so under highlight cell rules, You can do greater than, less than, between. You can do text. So maybe you want to highlight any text that contains the word MECO, right? Any cell that has the word MECO in it, it'll highlight that, or any other word, store, lane, avenue. It can do a date occurring. So if you have date cells in here, you can say a date in January, a date in August, or next century, whatever it might be. Duplicate values. A lot of times when we get data, dirty data from different sources, we might have duplicate values and we want to see what those are very quickly, and I'll show you later how to remove duplicates. But this will show us, hey, you have a duplicate in here, so it brings it to your attention that you have a duplicate value. The top bottom rules, I think we saw. So we did top 10 items. These are, you can do as percentage or the number of items, top 10%, the bottom 10 items, the bottom 10%. It'll also do like above average. So it'll calculate a mean and then set a rule based on that. And you've changed the values, that mean changes. So, so many times I see people using spreadsheets, they do all this stuff manually, right? They change the formatting. I'm going to highlight the top 10, boom, boom, boom. Then they change it in, like, oh, I'm going to have to undo that highlighting and redo it. No, you don't have to do that. If you build a rule, make Excel do the work. That's so often the case that we want to push the work from us, the logic from us, to Excel. We'll use some of these in our case, obviously. Let's do another one. So I'm going to highlight that whole row or that whole thing again. And one tool that I haven't showed you, and I think this became available in 2013 or 2016, I can't remember. But you've probably seen this before. When I highlight a range, there's something, little box that comes up. You see that little box? It says, hey, this is the quick analysis tool. And it recommends things, right? So, we're going to deal with all these things separately, but one of the things that it recommends is, hey, it looks like you have a lot of numbers here. Why don't you do some formatting. We'll deal with data bars a little bit later, but you can do different things here. For that. So they want me to show you that. Let's say we are going to let's say we're going to print this guy. So I'm going to go to page break view. Okay. And let's do page layout. Let's change this to landscape while we're in here. Okay, we see, well, I'm not changing with the scaling at this point, but I want a page break, here before my monthly store sales. So I'm gonna go to that column and go to break and say insert page break. If I want to do that or not. Let's do this for now. let's go to, well, we can leave it, stay in this view. Let's go over here under the page layout view, and let's go into print titles. And let's kind of go through some of the logic in here. I'm gonna figure out how to put that nicely. So a couple things. We can set a print area, so an area that we want to print this first time, and we can say, in this case, I want to print A1 through F24. And I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to set another print area. I'm going to say go from A25 the whole way down to looks like N46. Okay. Looks like it says rows repeat at top. I can't remember what our first two rows are, but those are going to be our 1 and 2. We want those on the top of every page. So it looks like it's some labeling purposes. And rows or columns to repeat at left. And I think it makes sense to show the name of the state and the store, even when we're going to be in like future months. For example, we're going to see June, July. So columns to repeat at left, we're going to do A and B. Let's do print preview. And see what this looks like. And I'll probably do this in 2 steps. Let's scale this guy. Now let's go to print preview. Better. All right, what else? In this same area under page layout, we can change margins. So right now we're normal. They have some predefined, wide and also narrow. We can do custom margins where we set wherever we like. This is very useful sometimes when I'm printing something small. We can center on the page horizontally and vertically. So if we center horizontally, it'll be, within the page. If we do vertically, it'll be from top to bottom. So that sometimes is beneficial. The header footer. This is, a header and footer will display on every page. There are some certain things that we typically use, and those are built in. So let's go to custom footer. And we have a left section, a center section, and a right section. And one of the things, if I'm creating a spreadsheet I'm printing a spreadsheet that I know has multiple pages and someone's going to print it, I think it always makes sense to put page numbers on it. And further, I think it always makes sense to put the page of the pages. So if I do page, and these little buttons up here are like, they put in little code. So this is page number of, and then if I click the one with multiple numbers, page 1 of 2 and page 2 of 2 will be presented when I print this. Other things, I'm going to go to the left section here. This is the date and time. So not to create, this is date, comma, time. This is when it's printed. So date, comma, time. And the other thing is, especially if you're printing this and handing it to someone, maybe you emailed it to them, but maybe they're also looking to find it and you want to tell them where it's stored. Well, that can be included as well. So if I click on the insert file path, this will say like it's on the C drive or the O drive. This is the workbook. So this tells you the workbook name, like this one would be morning.xls. And then finally, this is the sheet name. So it'll say, this is the path, this is the workbook, and it'd be in the sales report. So if we see, now it's going to be an ugly footer, but we can see down below it has the date and time, it has the directory, and it has page 1 of 1. Okay, so tools that we can use there. All right, I think, even though I didn't go in a linear fashion by any means, I think I got the basics of Module 2. I think basically I showed you all the things it wants me to show you. I may have missed some things, but I'll go through and look. So what we're going to do is tonight at midnight you do your Module 1 stuff. Module 2 stuff, I'll probably set a date of next Monday as well, so I'll give you another week to do it. But we'll probably, on Wednesday, we'll do a case together, right? We'll make sure that we can do a case together. And then whatever time we have left, and there might be some things in here I missed, I don't know. I think I went through everything, but I may not have. We will move on to Module 3, okay? Because, like I said, I think it makes sense to go through the basic things because there may be, this stuff was pretty basic, but maybe some stuff you learned that you didn't know, some tips or tricks that can help you in the future, okay? Any questions? Yes, Kara. The exam score counts. So it counts as is. The project cases, those are the ones that get adjusted. The exams, I think those exams were pretty well, I think. Yes?
The training doesn't count.
The training doesn't count. If you see it in
It says it on the...
Yeah, if you see it in the grade book, it's not going to be factored in the grade. Trainings don't count. The only things that count are cases and the exam. Trainings do not count. Thank you. Well, have a great day.